Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of YouTube Insights Hangout on Air. I'm Tara Walpert Levy, and I lead the ads marketing team here at YouTube. And as some of you know from our last show, this episode always follows our release of the YouTube Insights Report, which is our quarterly digest of insights, data, and trends that are happening in video. If you haven't seen it, you can go check it out at thinkwithgoogle.com and just type in YouTube Insights. And don't worry, if you haven't read it yet, you can still follow along with this conversation. Our goal is to let all of the detailed stats live on their own in the report and to bring in some experts and folks from the field that we can have some fun speaking a little bit higher level about the trends that pop in the report. And so we have a great group today to talk about, in particular, fanship, the difference between a passive viewer and a truly engaged fan, and how you turn audiences into fans and customers by getting them to choose to really engage with content that your audiences and customers care about. So we shared some best practices on how to do that in the report, and we'll be interested in hearing what the group today has to share. Guys, you're all leaders and experts in this field. What I'd love to do is have each of you start by introducing yourself and just give the audience a bit of a sense of why you're here. Zay, why don't we start with you?
Hi, I'm Zay Frank. I'm the EVP of Video for Buzzfeed. I run a production company out here in LA that is focused on social video, and in the last year and a little bit, we've been heavily involved with YouTube, and have grown to about from about 70K subs to close to 4 million, and are in the 70 to 90 million monthly view range. So we're all in, so to speak.
Well, and you've got experiences with this yourself. You've got a million subs personally, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay. Awesome. We're thrilled to have you, Jill.
Hi, I'm Jill Kinney. I oversee the branded entertainment function at Gatorade, and also influencer marketing. And so we do a lot of long-form, short-form content, and we're going to be doing more with YouTube moving forward. And I unfortunately do not have 1 million subscribers yet.
But you should. But you should.
Well, we're gonna share how on this call. It's only a matter of time. Okay, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Bryan Smith. This is Kelly Schofield. We head up strategy at 72 and Sunny, which is a modern ad agency based in LA and Amsterdam. Some of our clients are Target, Samsung, Activision, and Google, most of which are very active on YouTube, and it's central to a lot of the marketing we do with them.
Awesome. Okay, and Allison?
Hi, I'm Allison Stern, co-founder of Tubular, and we're mission control for online video. So we help brands and publishers grow audience on YouTube through data-driven recommendations. And we are excited to have some of our data in the YouTube Insights report. So thanks for having me on the Hangout today.
Very cool. We're psyched to have you all. And thank you for the data and insights you provided for the report, Allison. Why don't we, just to sort of warm up, I'd love to get a sense, if we're going to spend a lot of this conversation talking about fans and how you build fans, would love to just get a sense from each of you of, is there a brand that you are a particular fan of as a consumer? And maybe we'll work backwards, Allison, and start with you.
Yeah, so I love GoPro. I actually love to ski, and I love video, as you know, so it combines two of my passions, and they've done an amazing job on YouTube building a community around adventure and sharing and sharing your successes and your action successes with friends. So I've been impressed what they've done with the brand, and also love the product.
Very cool. Yeah, I aspire to having one of those GoPro videos to post. I'm not sure I can keep up with quite the level of activity those guys demonstrate, but what they're able to capture is amazing. Bryan, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm a big fan and have been for a long time of Lego. I am a lifelong nerd and the father of a nerd in the making. And the product itself is a big part of our daily lives. And as a marketer, I really admire the kind of stories that Lego can tell, both at a really high level with like the recent movie, but also things like the collaboration that the brand did with Google. It feels like a very modern marketer, something I think we at 72 admire. And personally, it just gives me great satisfaction every day to build with Lego.
Yeah. Lately, I've been really geeking out over a little brand at Target. Full disclosure, one of our clients called Kid Made Modern. It's a line of craft supplies created by Todd Oldham. And I don't even have kids, but I still use them because it has a really, really clear mission. It was really designed to help families and kids like live a more empowered, creative lifestyle when faced with a lack of creativity in schools. So, you know, right now it's just a product line. They're not doing much in the social space, but it just feels like a huge opportunity because what they stand for is really important.
That's awesome. Well, and those are the brands I think that are having the easiest time moving folks from viewers to fans, is if there's sort of a cause or a passion above and beyond the product that viewers can really connect with. So I'm sure you'll take good care of them.
Try.
Mm-hmm.
Jill, what about you?
For me, professionally, I really admire Dove and what they've done from a content perspective. I know Red Bull seems like a more obvious choice to look at, and obviously what they do is pretty amazing from a content creation standpoint. But Dove is interesting because they, have developed a reputation for quality content. To look for it, and they're able to convey the brand belief of, beauty from the inside without having too many product messages, and you walk away more engaged and feeling more empowered by the brand. So Dove is a brand that we've looked at a lot.
Cool. And Zay, what about you?
You said as a consumer, so for me it's Nika whiskey, which is a Japanese brand, and I just from a consumption end I would have to call them out, and hopefully they're listening right now because I'm a big fan. From a professional standpoint, I would say that I'm especially in this capacity, I'm a fan of any brand that is willing to really engage in a dialogue around what branded content is and what it could be. So recently I've had some really great conversations with Purina, and we've done some work with them. And I really do think that is, where we are right now, is that it is a dialogue, and there isn't a hard and fast rule, but I think that thinking of branded content as content and also as some sort of a handshake between the brand and the content creator is the most exciting place to be, and I'm always happy when that dialogue can happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's interesting because you really see brands today, I think, going the full gamut from folks who really embrace that and are partnering deeply with content creators and developing ongoing series and things like that, to folks who are just actually doing really simple things to take advantage of the medium. One of the things I was thinking about as you guys were talking, right, because you talked about Lego and you talked about Dove, and one of the brands that's moved me recently is, I'm a huge sucker for the P&G Moms campaign, and in particular for the sort of full-length stories of what's happening with the athletes and their moms. And what all three of those brands do is they simply take advantage of creative capabilities that weren't there before the web, which is they can actually tell a full story that might not otherwise be available in a 15 or a 30-second spot. So I'm sure we're going to see, we're just at the beginning. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of folks pushing the envelope a lot more aggressively as we move forward. But it's amazing to see even the simple difference in moving someone emotionally that just a few more seconds can make. So to that point, I mean, it's interesting. We talk about viewers and fans like that's a given thing. I think it's still sort of pretty hotly debated out there. What's the difference between a viewer and a fan, and does it matter? So we talk sometimes about the fact that YouTube today reaches more 18 to 34-year-olds than any cable network. But is that what matters? Is it the reach that matters, or is it the level of engagement? And do you think that the folks on YouTube are viewers, or are they fans? Does it depend what they're watching? How do you guys think about it?
You're gonna have to give us a cue of who goes first.
You can jump in, but Zay, since you leaned in, I'll call on you.
Sure. I mean, the answer to that question is both. I think that you have a continuum from a certain amount of passivity to a high level of engagement, and part of that has to do with the amount of point of contacts that you have available, and also just general awareness. So, I think with most campaigns anyways, you're really talking about trying to hit a spread between increasing, what I would call just general viewership, and then also providing opportunities for people who might characterize themselves as fans. And maybe that's the key to this is self-characterization on the fan side. You give them opportunities to express themselves and things like that. I mean, I think that from the work that we do, we're most interested in social spread, which sort of necessarily means that the distribution between fans and viewers is always going to be there, right? I mean, because we're always going to be looking for people to spread beyond some sort of an inside bubble, which poses some really interesting challenges, because you really want messages that are going to resonate very, very broadly, so that they can have maximum reach.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and it's interesting when you say self-characterization. I think that element of choice, right? Because again, we can sort of see very clearly who is choosing to engage with the content, to share the content, to riff on the content, and that gives us a demarcation, I think, to your point, of fans versus viewers that just we haven't had before, and it's nice to be able to sort of measure our content against that test of how much of that fan engagement is it really driving. I mean, Bryan and Kelly, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jill.
No, I was just going to comment on that. I mean, as soon as you've chosen to watch the content, it automatically moves you closer on that continuum to more of a fan. And obviously that's the holy grail. You'd rather have fans that are engaging with your content. And that's what gets me so excited about content versus advertising, of course, is because the choice that's made and the inherent engagement that happens. You can share it, which is also, of course, what we want. We're always looking for that earned media that we call it. I think, Zay, you called it something else. But that's how we characterize it. The more that people are inspired enough to share it, that's the ideal, and then you reach a wider audience, of course.
Yeah. Jill, it's interesting you talk about sort of content versus advertising. Tell me how you think about the difference between those two, right? Because in some ways you could argue they're sort of becoming one and the same.
Well, no, and actually that is true to some extent, and I think, and I can say this because I don't do specifically the advertising for our brand. I think our Gatorade is a brand, and there's many others, that the advertising is of such high quality that it is engaging. I guess what I'm saying, though, is with advertising, you put it on air or place it somewhere and there isn't a choice to watch it, it's interrupting. I know not on YouTube, but in other places. And so when I'm talking about content, I'm talking about the fact that you have a choice. And typically that there's more of a story there versus just spouting messages.
YouTube ads has just joined.
Sorry, guys. That was not to indicate that what you were saying was not engaging. I was not. I am a fan. Like technical difficulty on our end.
Okay.
But you were just wrapping up on saying where I left you was that the quality of the advertising made it sort of content that folks were actually proactively engaging and sharing. Is that right?
Right.
And I think for us, fandom is what we aspire to, and it's a really high bar to get to. Certainly we don't really like to talk about the people we're targeting with our work as consumers. That's treating them as people in a transaction. They're people, and we want to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, I guess since I'm the data nerd on the call, I wanted to share something interesting, which is in the last 30 days alone, there are 65,000 videos about Samsung that were uploaded onto YouTube, and only 20 of them officially came from Samsung. So it's really amazing to think about all the fans out there and the fact that they're just so passionate about brands that they're actually creating content. It's not just sharing it or viewing it, but actually creating videos dedicated to your brand. And so many brands out there don't even know that that content exists. For example, with Samsung, in the last 30 days, there were 22 million views on fan-uploaded content and only 2 million views on official Samsung content. So just to know that that like really rabid fan base exists out there is right. Amazing.
It's such an interesting point too, because I think that in this context we're really talking about a behavior set on a platform, right? We're talking about like the way that a fan might interact with content on YouTube, but that's the weird complexity with all this is that we are fans of brands in real life, right? I mean, every person develops these relationships. They might not express it in such unique ways as uploading video content, but it is this kind of like broader, bigger ecosystem. And I mean, I think about this Daniel Kahneman principle where you have to see something a number of times before it actually sinks in, and I think about that kind of relationship between viewership and fandom is that this is probably some sort of a power law curve where, there's a subset of people that are fans and then the overall viewership. And, yes, we're moving people towards fandom, but most likely the relationship between those two parts stays somewhat even, so that the trick is raising all boats to some extent.
Well, that's a good analytical challenge for you, Allison. Maybe you guys can come up with sort of the curve of what it takes to convert a viewer to a fan. But your point is interesting. We actually see that a lot. That's true across a number of major brands. That the fan-created content dwarfs the brand-created content, and it's interesting. I mean, go ahead, Jill.
I was just going to say we're talking about fandom, but I think it also goes to brand ownership, and that's one thing we've started talking about a lot. If you can get to where you're, in our case, athletes, when athletes feel ownership of the brand as much or more so than us being the owners of the brand, that's really ideal. And obviously they have to be fans first before they're going to really feel that ownership, and then they will create content.
Yeah, that's such a brave brand behavior as well. I think that's something we talk a lot about. So we work on Call of Duty and a bunch of other Activision brands, and certainly those are deeply passionate, opinionated audiences. And for any major brand, you've got a traditional model of command and control. We're going to dictate what our brand is about, and to embrace the community of people who are passionate about your brand, who sometimes, by the way, just like any fan, have bad days with you. It's a real behavior shift, I think, on our end to be able to say it's not just about what we make and push out to you. It's also about embracing what you're doing, shining a light on the best parts of it, and responding when you're not so happy. It really changes the dynamic for us.
And I think like it is a relationship, an intense relationship when done right. And like any relationship, you can't just let it grow stagnant. We were talking about, I guess I would say one of the biggest brands out there, Beyonce. And even though she's beyond critical mass in terms of fans and people raising their hand to engage with her in all capacities, she still continues to blow minds, dropping her visual album, just surprising people, acknowledging them, bringing her into her life in ways that I don't think few kind of celebrities have. Like, she keeps raising the bar. I think she understands it's a relationship, and you kind of can't let that wither away.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it's one of the really interesting and challenging things, I think, for a number of brands right now, right? Because there's an always-on nature to that is different, I think, than how many of us sort of grew up in the branding world, where you'd have these massive spikes around a particular campaign or a particular product launch, and then you'd have more minimal coverage for quite some time until the next big piece of news that you wanted to radiate out. Whereas, as you're pointing out, the customers are there all the time. They want to have that. If you're going to have a strong relationship, it's going to be there all the time, and thinking about sort of how we navigate to that kind of behavior is interesting and challenging. Allison, I don't know if that's something you see in your data in terms of whether brands are producing content in a more steady basis like more traditional content creators, or you see more big sort of spikes and drops.
Definitely what you're saying is spot on. There's this transition happening from campaign-based marketing to this evergreen concept where you have to create a channel that's always living and always interacting with fans, which can be quite challenging. But I think it's actually just about changing the way you think about it. If you think about Red Bull or GoPro, or people who have really built entertainment channels on YouTube. They've seen a lot of success. But even sort of smaller based evergreen concepts like beauty brands that are constantly engaging with influencers. And even, I actually think Beyonce is a best practice for another reason, because music channels also often have trouble because they'll release a big album and then their channel will go dormant for a long period of time. And what Beyonce does is she'll do behind the scenes, she'll do Q&A, she'll put up every piece of content, things that you wouldn't ordinarily think of content, but yet something like her doing behind the scenes with a fan that someone just catches in a casual moment will get 1 million views. Yeah. So just as important for brands.
I don't think those two models are mutually exclusive either. There's certainly a need in marketing to have big spikes where you dominate in your category, where you really grab people's hearts. But that's not a sustainable model. It's about layering, right? Where maybe in order to get that big spike, you do something that's very broad, very mass, and push it as much as you can pull with it. And then it's layering in stuff where if you've got a smaller fan base, how do you keep them feeling like you're nurturing that relationship and be okay that maybe the view count of those assets may not get into the millions, but the people who are engaging deeply and are committed to you and are acting upon it.
I mean, we were sort of talking abstractly. I mean, just a sort of in the weeds example is I think that we're right at the point where we have the kind of real-time reflexive data where we can think of something which we here call live piloting. Where I will say this is that we're talking a lot about these very kind of aggressive brands, but obviously some brands they have been around for a long time. They have a very very set way of doing things, and it's a little difficult to come into this conversation at full bore. So. I think a very easy way to think about this sort of spike versus build paradigm is, when you have success with a piece of content, thinking about iterating on it, I think, is a really awesome thing, right? I mean, a lot of times a brand will have a big hit, and then it'll be another 6 months, 8 months, year before another big campaign comes out. But all that time, I think you can think about iterating against, hey, why do you think that video worked? What exactly resonated? Let's try something else. Let's try another video. Let's try a series of videos where the content producer and the brand are iterating experimentally with the use of data towards something. And I have to say that when I look at the expenditure on national TV spots, I think about an eighth of that budget. If an eighth of that budget went into kind of test piloting in front of a live audience some of those concepts, even some of the actors, what kind of impact that could make. So I think there's a lot of really exciting opportunities blending data and this some of the creative core of this industry.
I think that's a great point. And you talked about the range of traditional or more avant-garde brands. I'd say one of the places we get the most questions from folks who are more traditional today and want to dip their toe in is, all right, well, if we look at the content creators, what can we learn from the content creators? Right? What are people actually watching on YouTube? And so we talked a little bit about that in the latest report. And it's funny, you kept mentioning Beyonce. Music is obviously endemic to YouTube, and so it's probably not terribly surprising that that was the #1 genre for the 18 to 34-year-old audience. Were there other things that you saw in either the differences between men and women or age groups or just in total that interested you or surprised you?
I mean, for us, it's a fairly obvious observation that the channels that are popping are channels with voices, with creators who have a specific point of view on the world and have characters that people form relationships with. And that's something, again, I think we want our brands to pursue as well, is not just tell people a story, tell them about your product, have a point of view that people go, yes, I believe in that, like Dove has done, like Old Spice has done. Champion something bigger than your brand, and then where possible, bring characters in that people can have a relationship with.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, that's the difference, I think, between trying to sort of share the heart of your brand with the heart of your audience versus sort of trying to put together a quick, good product spot, right? And they're wildly different things, and I think folks have always wanted to do the former. It's not like anyone ever said, I don't want to tell a good story or I don't want to connect with people in a meaningful way. It's just that there's a lot more tools at our disposal now to do so.
Yeah. Right, and all the measurement model, speaking as, we're part of PepsiCo, we're part of a big brand, all the measurement models are set up more to support the traditional advertising, so it's a little bit tougher to be able to demonstrate what it is that you can create when you're releasing content. And back to what, we all have the hypothesis it's more engagement, and obviously the click-through rates tell us something. But especially for our particular brand, that's been something that's a big challenge, is the measurement.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's actually been a huge focus for us recently. There were some announcements that we made yesterday at the IAB on exactly this point, because we recognize measurement has been a big gap for a lot of brands, and frankly, rightly so. But it's interesting because to the point Zay was making, right? In theory, actually, digital should give you better measurement than you've ever had before. Because if you think about any of the brand metrics, issues of brand recall, brand awareness, intent to purchase, any of those kinds of things all the way through to sales, one of the challenges I think in media to date is you often don't get that information in time to iterate live, right? You get it after the campaign and you assess how well you did or didn't do and make decisions for next time. What the web should allow you to do is to actually get that information real time or pretty darn close and at a scale you couldn't achieve previously. And so I think working with the industry, this is a pretty big focus for us and a lot of other players to make brand measurement actually a reason why you would invest specifically in more made-for-web content as an advantage, not even at parity. But I think you're right that we're sort of on that. We're still on that journey.
And that's exactly the challenge that Tubular has been attempting to solve as well. I think that some of my favorite data from the Insight report was around women liking cake and men liking bacon. And we really have gotten it down to that granular level. If you think about a cooking show on TV, you might know which sort of the gender of that audience of the entire show. You'd never know recipe by recipe who was watching, what they thought, what they said, what their response was. And Tubular has really captured that data. One thing interesting in response to Zay's love for whiskey is actually if you look at the data in terms of what cooking topics skew most male, it's whiskey and corn dogs. So you're right.
There you go. There you go. I have been proven analytically to be male. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of these points. I mean, I think that you had started out asking what was sort of interesting about the data that came back, and I mean, to me the segmentation is interesting to some extent, but the other side of it is just a reminder of how complex the audience is. I mean, it's just it's kind of amazing and wonderful, and that's probably one of the most profound things that's been happening in the network world is, you start typing some bizarre question into Google and it's already answering it for you, which is a signifier that lots of people are thinking the same thing. So, I think one of the really interesting challenges here is also where you're getting your cues from in terms of serving these needs. And one is, I think that there's a lot of really interesting potentials for targeting and refining this kind of gonzo taxonomy that Netflix thinks about. And then the other one is also sort of thinking about maybe there's a different kind of emotional human taxonomy just about our experience as people that can serve as a foundation for content. And we think about that from a social perspective quite a bit, that maybe storytelling and character, maybe those aren't the fundamental bottom line principles. Maybe it's things like joy and happiness and finding yourself in media, hearing someone say something that you've been thinking all along but no one's actually said. I think that there's this kind of stuff I think just blasts wide open the way that we think about content and the way that we think about opportunity, and that's what's really exciting.
That's awesome. That's inspirational to me. Bryan and Kelly, you guys must get asked about this kind of stuff all the time by clients. I mean, how do you react to that? Do you think we're in the middle of a major shift? Are you driving clients? Are clients driving you?
Take it.
In terms of bringing stuff onto digital platforms?
In terms of thinking fundamentally differently about how data and interactive access and these sort of more fundamental human connections might reshape how you think about storytelling?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think we're all learning it in real time, obviously. There's a lot we can do with data. There's a lot we can't do fast enough. A lot of it is not having access to it or having the right tools or skills for reading the data that's out there. There are so many signals. How do we separate them?
Yeah.
So I think something we always kind of hold ourselves to is looking at the data, but looking broadly too about the cultural context and really using culture as a barometer, which is where YouTube comes in handy a lot. You know, I think from the report, obviously the food phenomenon really popped out to us as the main trend, growing equally with men and women, which is probably surprising to some. And, you know, that's on one side, kind of ground up. And then on the other side, you see, like, the Super Bowl this year, there were 2 Greek yogurt commercials. What does that mean? Like, obviously, our relationship with food is shifting from all sides. Yeah. What does that mean? What do all those data points mean? And what is it pushing against in culture? And that's where we try to mine a lot of good insights and tensions and ways for brands to either bring who they are to the conversation or find a new way in.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's a good segue. The food phenomenon was part of why we profiled Jamie Oliver and his channel in the report, and we talked a little bit about how he was able to grow his channel to, you know, from 0 to 600,000 subs. And what we get asked a lot is, you know, how can I do that, whether it's a content creator or a brand? Now, I'm curious, Zay, you know, you've done this personally, and you've done it as a company with Buzzfeed. You know, you both have millions of subscribers. You know, what's some of your advice on best practices for if you're just starting out building a channel? How do you think about building audience and building fans?
So I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian here, and just point out that, you know, we don't really think about subscriber growth. Especially because our model is very much about social spread, and you know, only about 10% of our views come from subscribers. So we really think about the main. And first I'll talk broadly, and then I can talk about my channel. But I think that the biggest thing is to try and understand what the mechanisms of growth are. And in certain cases, you might get that might point you to trying to really understand the YouTube algorithm. In our case here, what we really try to do is understand what are the different facets of social growth, and part of that is a content challenge, so kind of ripping apart formats and trying to focus on what categories of content or how we might experiment against those categories would lead to social spread. And then there's framing and then network properties. In terms of my own channel, I think that, you know, you can, for me, it was when I really started thinking about the mechanisms of growth and iterating against those mechanisms that you saw the sort of shift in my channel. I had previously really been focused on emotion and participation, which I value both of those very much so. And in that case, the paradigm was very much about subscribers, because I needed people to do things, physical things, make things. And then when I became really interested in growth, you can sort of start to see that I you know, just started experimenting. Does there have to be a talking head? Oh, maybe that requires people to actually like me. So I removed that and moved more to imagery and footage and voiceover and kind of abstracted to something that yielded more growth.
Cool. Allison, from a quantitative perspective, are you guys seeing anything that you think sort of make for some good tips for folks starting out?
Yeah, I think there are 3 secrets to YouTube success in terms of growing a channel. The first is content, so it's very much about the content that you create. The second is collaborations, so it's really important to collaborate with native YouTube talent and people who already have audiences on YouTube. I think when you're starting from scratch, it's very hard, and one of the best ways to do it is partner with existing talent on the platform. And the third is consistency, which we've already discussed a bit, and this concept of evergreen. And even if it's posting once a month and that's your consistency, I think it's really important to establish a schedule that keeps fans coming back.
Yeah, can I speak briefly on the collaboration front? We're giant fans of that here. And I think, in the traditional ad world, sometimes there's skepticism about, ooh, are you just borrowing interest, or is this a paid endorsement? And I think we're really beginning to see a lot of successful experiments where it's not, where it is a win for everybody involved, where if it's done authentically, and that's clearly the key, where it's authentic to the brand and to the creator and to the audience. The brand gets that liftoff that you're talking about, where we're inserting ourselves into a conversation and into a community that's already there, that aligns with our brand values. The creator, frankly, gets validation that I'm on a big stage, not just a paycheck, but now a major brand has said, you matter, you're great, and then your fans go, my guy just made it. He's been blessed by, like, in the world of Call of Duty, we did a collaboration with FPS Russia, who is a massive presence on YouTube, but working with him, we got crazy results on our end. He got one of his most highly viewed videos, and I think his fans said, first, we love Call of Duty, we love that FPS Russia would do something with it, but also, my guy just made the big leagues, and when he appears as a cameo in our big multi-million-dollar live-action trailer, that he's been anointed by the gaming gods.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, and you guys have taken that one to the top of the ads leaderboard so many times. You've clearly got something going there.
Thank you.
One thing, just actually, as we sort of talk about the ads leaderboard, it's interesting that none of you actually mentioned promotion as a success strategy for building your channel or for building your initial audience and fan base. And I'm curious, that's one of the things that does actually come up as a source of tension a lot, is folks are so enamored with the owned and earned portion of the platform that it almost creates this sort of inner resistance to the idea that one should have paid media around it. But when we look quantitatively at most of the successful channels on YouTube, or frankly even most of the successful videos on YouTube, most of them have a strong hook, particularly early on, whether it's paid advertising or a celebrity endorsement or whatever it is, something has sort of given it a little bit of a jump start. So curious to just get some reaction on, what role do you think promotion plays in the appreciation and development of fans for your content?
I think it's an integrated part of the. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Darn it!
I was going to say I think promotion's really.
All right. You're right.
Go ahead.
We all agree.
Who's talking?
Allison, go ahead.
All right. Well, Zay's a video star, so the fact that that the data gets to talk first is cool. We see that with promotion. It's an extremely valuable distribution channel, and one of the cool things about TrueView is it really is earned media in a way. So because people are choosing to watch and they skip if they don't want to watch it, and you're literally only paying for people that are viewing that content through, that actually the price goes down the better your content is, and engagement goes up, and it is a really amazing ad unit and a successful way to promote your content. We do see that.
Allison, we may have to put you on our payroll.
I'll go a step further and say we love TrueView, not just because it's efficient for our brands, but because it's such a great, and I'm going to say this might sound terrible, it's a great stick for advertisers to raise their game. The way that we interpret it, this is the bar you need to cross now. If you now know if people are walking away from your ad, you've interrupted them, you've bothered them, you've wasted their time, they're skipping you. That's not just like a, oh shucks, that's a fail, a creative fail, and hopefully this becomes a key metric, not just of hey, did we get people to watch this thing, but is our work touching people? Is it connecting with people? Can that be a key data point for us as we think about what makes for effective work?
Cool. Jill, how do you feel about the stick?
No, absolutely couldn't agree. And we just did something after Peyton Manning broke the, this was obviously pre-Super Bowl, but after Peyton Manning broke the record for most touchdowns in a season, and we had, something ready to go and used TrueView, so we knew, who was engaged with it, and you've got to have the paid behind it to help fuel it, and then of course you still are looking for the earned media as well. So you need something that's going to light it on fire at first. So we absolutely, otherwise you can have the greatest content in the world, if no one sees it, who cares?
Yeah.
I think sometimes too when we've had even resistance from clients who haven't done a TrueView before, they don't understand the matchmaking capabilities. You have this great content, but if it's in the right place, you're just kind of they're putting you together. You're the opening act for the thing that the person really wants to see. So to Bryan's point, we have to create great content, but it has to kind of honor the environment, honor the content creator, and honor the reason why the people are there in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I think that does shake up our game and really speak to like designing for the platform more, designing for just, I don't know, not just putting the ad online, but really thinking about what's going to be the best prelude to the content they're there to watch.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love hearing it from folks outside ourselves. That's fantastic reinforcement, and frankly, we do see that if you look at most of the, we publish a monthly ads leaderboard that shows essentially what ads were most watched and shared that month. And while sort of the big breakout TV hits are on there because they're simply great ads and they tend to have the reach to make the list, most of the ads that are there every month are made for web or made for YouTube for all of the reasons that you guys just described. Zay, do you want to offer a contrarian point of view, or are you with the guys on this?
No, I'm not the token contrarian here.
No,
I agree with everything that's been said. It's there's some really great seamless integration capabilities with Google Analytics, AdWords, and TrueView, where you can really get the content in front of the right people, which I think is super exciting, and obviously that's a scenario that all of us would want. And then the other side of the coin is something that we were talking about before in various ways, which was that I think we're really talking about exponential growth, and I think that all of us are very interested in growth patterns and thinking about some of the network characteristics that lead to this kind of minimal condition for something to really catch on and spread. And I think things like TrueView are definitely part of that equation. We do tests sometimes where we will unlist videos and buy just TrueView against it to see what kind of social spread comes out of it, and what kind of engagement activity comes out of it. And I think it's part of. I think that it's going to be a really interesting next couple of years as the ad products evolve, and as the content starts to evolve also towards making the best use of formats like TrueView, where you got 5 seconds.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and it's funny when you talk about exponential growth. One of the stats that we highlighted in the report was the fact that when people were exposed to TrueView, for those who, to your point, chose to watch and sort of self-engaged, it actually drove the engagement on the channel 10 times, which just seemed remarkable, right? We had to sort of double and triple check that. But I think you're right. There's this ripple effect here in the platform, and the question is just how do you start the ripple and how do you keep that ripple going?
Right.
So I guess the last thing I'd say is one of the other challenges that we often encounter, and I suspect many of you do too, and frankly it's reflected even in the conversation today, is that this new world is complicated, and there's a lot to think about, there's a lot that's experimental, there's a lot we're all still learning together. As we wrap up, if you were going to give just one simple piece of advice to a brand that's watching this and thinking about, gosh, I really should be investing more significantly in developing my fan base, what piece of advice would you give them? And Bryan, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'll echo something that came up before, which is experiment, because this is early days right now, and certainly when traditional marketing muscle is go all in right now, push the big thing out in the biggest way possible, and certainly that's still, we should be doing that at times, but it feels like if we're looking to create fandom, light a bunch of small fires, see which ones stick, and then tend that one. We don't have to necessarily make everything a hit right out of the gate. We can build it over time.
Great.
I would just jump on that. Oh, sorry.
No,
I would just jump on that and say, I absolutely agree, and I think probably the biggest challenge is probably organizationally. It's deciding that you're going to try this iterative process. It's clearing some discretionary budget for that process, and really focusing on friction. And friction on approvals, giving some decision makers autonomy to really follow this and get the best information that they can from the process, because I think that ultimately we are talking about some process changes here. We're talking about a new kind of information exchange between content creators and brands, and ultimately it's going to lead to a long conversation in the best possible way.
That doesn't sound simple, but it does sound like good advice.
That's right. It's not simple.
Jill, what about you?
I think to build on what Bryan said in terms of experimenting, which is huge, and what goes along with that, I think, is having a little bit more humble approach than probably what we typically as big brands have had. Speaking about this traditional advertising model, and it's like we tell you what we want you to hear, and I think being open to learning from the content creators that have had success, and making sure that it's a little bit more of a collaborative, back to if you've got fans, and a little bit more co-ownership of the brand, which is scary, but the more that we can do that, I think that you can reach success.
Cool. Kelly?
My advice is your fans are on YouTube, and you should be there too. I mean, it's important to be a part of the conversation that they're already having. And I think that there's a spectrum of involvement. At the far end, it's creating, an agile digital media studio where you're creating content specifically for YouTube, and you're iteratively responding to it based on engagement. I think at the other end of that spectrum, which is probably the place to start, is just respond to comments. Know who your top fans are. Know who your influencers are that are already fans of you. Be leaving comments on random videos where people are speaking passionately about your brand. I mean, that requires almost nothing, an hour a week, and it can be very meaningful in terms of building relationships with your fans. So I think there's a wide spectrum, and just dipping your toe into the waters is extremely important. And then eventually, a year later, you can have the studio.
Awesome. Kelly, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I'd go full circle to where the conversation started. Recognize them as fans and treat them like fans. You are a fan of something that's interesting enough to earn your time and your attention and your love and your devotion. And we were talking about, subscribers is a nice functional term. It's pretty transactional. It doesn't really capture the emotion or relational element of what these brands are really trying to achieve. So I would say to brands, don't ever use the S word. Really think about getting human beings to care about you.
Or change the platform on YouTube. Maybe we don't have a subscribe button. Maybe we have a...
Well, I'll tell you, that thought went through my head as you were talking. I think that's a really great point.
Yeah.
So, and really, guys, I feel like I've learned so much chatting with you guys today. I appreciate it. I'm sure the audience did too. And I would say my biggest takeaway actually is sort of on this point we ended on, which is the emotional component of us as marketers and what that takes to be successful on YouTube as well. Because I think we spend a lot of time as an industry talking about the intellectual aspects of this, right? How do we close measurement? How do we do a better job experimenting? How do we follow audiences where they are? But I was really struck by some of the comments that you guys made about the humility and the bravery that it takes as a brand to do some of these things. And in the same way that I think the table was loudly pounded for the treat people as people, fans as fans, and sort of tap into the emotional aspects of our audiences. One of the biggest things I take from this is as we talk to marketers to tap into those same emotional aspects and remember marketers are people too. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good hanging out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.